are watching WKY Television, Channel 4, Oklahoma City. Do 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 da 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 little da da da. Probably the greatest piece of music ever written, Looney Tunes. When you hear that, you knew you were going to have the hell entertained out of you. Porky Pig, Bugs Bunny, yeah, Elmer Fudd, all the characters. A lot of fun. I'll get back to that in a little bit. I want to talk about Bill Thrash just a little bit. Bill Thrash and I went to the same school system in Ada, Oklahoma. Bill was a couple of years younger than me. I remember seeing Bill when I was in the 9th grade. Bill was in the 7th. They're on the junior high campus. Right west of junior high was the Ada High School. We shared the same campus, but we stayed separated, the big kids and the little kids. Thrash was a scrawny little kid, and so was I. And anyhow, I knew Bill there, and we had a lot of fun. It was just a bunch of kids. Later on, high school, I knew Bill a little better in high school. I was a senior, he was a sophomore. But where I really got to know Bill was when I worked at Channel 10 with Bill Thrash. A lot of fun there. Bill Thrash, he really admired Steve Allen. Steve Allen was a pianist, wrote a lot of songs. Steve Allen was a funny guy. And Bill Thrash and I, we talked about Steve Allen a lot because we both admired him. It was a day and time when television was young. We were two young guys working in the same control room together there at Channel 10. Gosh, those were good times. They were fun. Pretty loose and pretty free. We learned a lot. If nothing else, we learned how not to do things. But it was a fun time. Later on, Thrash and I, we worked together at Channel 4. We'd both come up the big town way, and there we were working at Channel 4. Well, of course, we were in the big leagues then. And, Channel 4 was big league. At one time, it was probably one of the very biggest television stations in the whole country. Absolutely, we had equipment like no other TV station had. We could do things that most people wouldn't even dream of doing because we had the manpower, the ingenuity, the equipment, the people. If you said, how can you do something? We would darn sure figure out a way how to do it and do it right. Boy, those were good times. Well, anyway, going back to Looney Tunes, I remember one day there at Channel 10 in Ada, Bill and I were sitting in the control room, and we got to talking about Looney Tunes and the music that went with it, and we got to laughing. We got to laughing about cartoons and Looney Tunes. For the rest of the day, Bill and I were sitting there, and every now and then one of us would drop off into a thing of Looney Tunes, and we'd start going da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and we'd both break up and laugh. And that's one of the greatest things I remember about Bill. It was that particular day when we laughed our silly selves crazy because we were laughing about the funny of Looney Tunes. Well, Bill, here's to you.
Oklahoma television really began June 6, 1949, when WKY-TV Channel 4 signed on. They were the only television station in the state of Oklahoma. But just a few months later, KOTV in Tulsa came on. So there were two. Oklahoma City had one station, Tulsa had one. In December of '53, KWTV Channel 9 went on low power because they wanted to get on the air in December because OU was playing in the Orange Bowl January 1 and it was being televised on CBS. But then in the spring of '54, they went on full power on the tall tower that they built, which at that time was the tallest man-made structure in the world. It was taller than the Empire State Building. KVOO came on in '52 and Lawton KSWO came on in '53. But then in spring of '54, Ada, Muskogee, and Enid all signed on with television stations in those towns. Just a couple years later, KXI and Ardmore came on, and KETA, OETA's first station in Oklahoma City, came on in '56 with studios on the OU campus and the tower and transmitter right where we are now.
My special guest is a person who's been very important to the Lawrence Welk Show here on public television. He's produced most of our specials, he directs our weekly series, and he's the station manager for OETA, the producing station for the Lawrence Welk Show. Please welcome Mr. Bill Thrash.
Hello, Mary Lou.
Hi, Bill. It's great to have you.
Great to be on this side of the camera. I already like it.
Well, you're from Ada, Oklahoma.
That's where I was born and raised, and there was a full-time ABC affiliate television station there, and that's where I started my career. And I started the summer of '55, the same time that the Lawrence Welk Show premiered on ABC. So I remember it well. And Lawrence Welk was new to television, hadn't ever been on, but I had heard of him. I knew who he was, that he was a band leader in the '40s and had made records. So I had grown up with lots of music with my parents in Ada, and so I found one of these old records that Lawrence Welk made on Decca, and this was with Janie Walton singing some kind of a novelty song in the '40s. So I knew about him through that, and then I was fascinated because of my interest in music, that how well and how good these musicians are that play for Welk. And I knew it was 5:30 out in Hollywood. I'm watching it at 7:30 in the evening, but gosh, they're doing that in the afternoon out in Hollywood. And then afterwards, I knew that they went to the Aragon Ballroom to play dances and to play a gig. And so I was tuned into that early on in the beginning of my career. And so when we were in the control room switching the different ABC shows to that area, Welk was always there all through those years.
Did you always want a career in television?
Oh, absolutely. I was fortunate that even in junior high, I knew what I wanted to do. First, it was kind of radio, but that didn't last long at all. And then here came television, and I knew this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a part of television.
Did you ever want to be in front of the camera?
Not really. I was a theater major and music minor, and so I think I kind of got that out of my system in college, that I didn't want to be on stage, and I didn't want to perform other than play in bands, because I played piano and all through college, and I like that.
Now, before you came to public television, you were in network television.
I came from commercial television and moved from Ada to Oklahoma City, worked for the ABC affiliate while the Welk Show was still on in the '60s, and then I moved to the NBC affiliate and was there in the '70s and '80s.
Tell me about the Stars and Stripes show.
Well, that was between 1969 and '76. Here in Oklahoma City, it was the brainchild of Lee Allen Smith to do a patriotic, flag-waving 4th of July show every year. And we did that, and it was kind of in the protest of the Vietnam War that was going on, and so there needed to be positive things said about our country, and this is what this did. And this show was picked up by NBC. And so we had stars like Bob Hope, Tennessee Ernie Ford, Kate Smith, the Fifth Dimension, Dionne Warwick, Mike Douglas, John Davidson, and just every year Doc Severinsen. And we always had Les Brown and his band of renown. So that was a real kick, and those were real fun shows to do. And they were very well received on NBC. And that all ended the bicentennial year, 1976, with a big 2-hour show.
You also were instrumental in launching the career of Mary Hart.
Well, that's a special memory for me because I'm so proud of her. But in 1976, I hired Mary Hart from South Dakota to be the co-host of a popular daytime variety show called Danny's Day, starring Danny Williams. And so she was the co-host from 76 to 79 on the NBC affiliate in Oklahoma City. So Mary was just terrific and really learned a lot about her craft doing that show. But it was during her period on that show that I met Lawrence Welk. He came on the show when you guys were in town to do a concert, and he and Lon Varnell came out to the station for Lawrence to make an appearance to talk about his concert at the Lloyd Noble Arena in Norman, Oklahoma.
I was there.
And so he was there, and he was so great, and I was upstairs and knew he was in the building and made a point to meet him, and we had our picture made together. And then on that show, he and Mary danced on the show while Danny conducted the live music that we had then on that show. And that was a real special memory. And little did I know in 1977, meeting Lawrence Welk, that I'd have anything to do with the Lawrence Welk Show
So
12 years later.
How did the PBS specials begin?
Well, that is, I think, real interesting. First of all, that first special that you know about in '87 that sort of kicked all this off, Television Music Man, that had been on, and that was a documentary style show. Then in '91, when we started doing these local segments to fit into the weekly show, to really fill up the time where the commercials used to be, to make it a full hour uninterrupted on public television. In '91 was the first time we did that. And we produced that year 2 wonderful specials, one called Champagne Toast to the Big Bands. We taped that at the Welk Resort with Barney Liddell, Henry Cuesta, and Myron Florin hosting that. And it's been a real favorite ever since it's played. And then we also did the first Lennon Sisters special called Easy to Remember. And this was before Branson. They still lived in California. They weren't doing that much then, so it sort of brought them back. And those were 2 popular fundraising specials that we did for the stations who purchased the Lawrence Welk Show for the weekly show. So it was done for that. Then, because of the success of that, we thought PBS should have a brand new performance special with the people that were active then, and put on a special. And we started talking to Jim Scalem at PBS, who was in charge of fundraising programming, about doing one of those shows. This is late '91, after these other shows were so successful. Well, we thought we'll get together in the summer of '92 and talk more about it. Well, in May of '92, Mr. Welk passed away. And we already had this meeting set in San Francisco at the PBS meeting. So Bob Allen, Joanne Young, Jim Scalem, and I met for breakfast at the hotel in San Francisco to talk about the feasibility of doing a brand new special with orchestra and dancers and costumes and sets. And thinking normally they give that a lot of thought. We'll get back to you in a few weeks, months from now. But because of the timing of it, at that breakfast meeting, we were given the green light.
That day.
2-hour special. And it would be something, and we called it Lawrence Welk and a Tribute to the American Dream. That would be kind of the format. So we got the word that day, and we had an anticipated budget for that. And so we left the meeting, went out in the hallway, and Joanne and Bob and I looked at each other and said, now what do we do? So that was quite a moment, and one of the things we had to do right away was decide where are we going to do it. And we really considered 4 different locations. One, the Hollywood Palladium, We thought, well, that would make sense. A lot of the stars live in the Los Angeles area. That would fit. And no, there's a new facility in North Dakota. Maybe we ought to do it there, his home state. Or we could do it in the heartland of America, Oklahoma City, because that's where we are. And we would have the equipment and some of the things to do that with. But Johnny Mathis had just done a PBS special at the Opry House in Nashville. And I knew that they did more than just country specials. And I had worked over there some, directing a show called Pop Goes the Country and Nashville on the Road. So I knew a lot of those people over there, the crew members, the camera operators. I knew they had a great scenic department. They had everything. It was a great television facility. It was built for television. And also, what was a factor in that is that there was no Lawrence Welk Orchestra. We had to put together an orchestra, find an orchestra leader, a music director, one that knows about television and knows how to do that. And we knew about the great musicians in Nashville. So that led us to Nashville, and that's where we did it. Bill Walker was the music director, put the whole band together. Dick Dale played in the band, so did Myron, and Richard.
He did, my husband.
Richard played, you bet, Richard Maloof on bass. So we had, maybe 5 or 6 original Welk musicians, plus all the Nashville musicians. It was a great show.
Barbara Mandrell hosted
And Barbara, thanks. Barbara hosted it. She had been on the Welk show twice.
Yes.
And so she was a natural then to be the host. And it turned out to be a great show. That kicked off the new PBS performance specials. And it seems like we did one every other year.
So what does a producer do?
Well,
on those specials?
On a show like this, it's very involved, requires a lot of people. You've got to find the location, which we did, get a video truck, audio truck, and all the people. And the people and the crew are specialists. They're the camera operators, the sound technicians, video, lighting, makeup and hair, music, choreography. And so it's bringing these specialists together in a location, usually for about a week. There's a lot of pre-planning that goes on before it, but we all get together for about a week. So it is the ultimate collaborative effort of all these specialists coming together to produce a final product.
After all these years with the Lawrence Welk Show, do you have any special memories?
There's so many. One memory is getting to know so many of you that I never thought that would happen. But I kind of remember on Milestones and Memories where we set aside about 30 minutes in a very busy schedule of rehearsing, because there were 47 Welk stars at that event. And it was kind of an emotional week for everybody and a lot of hard work. But we set aside 30 minutes. We're going to take a picture. So everybody had to get suited up, look just right. We had a beautiful chiffon background on the stage. We brought risers from Oklahoma City so it would look just right. And we very quickly put together that picture that a lot of the Welk fans have or have seen. And I thought that was kind of special. It reminded me of the anniversary photographs at MGM when all the stars were brought together for lunch, and then they took that great picture. I kind of remember that.
We'll never be able to thank you enough for what you've done for all of us, and it's been great visiting with you.
Thanks, Mary Lou. I enjoyed it too.
Hello, I'm Pat Greaves. My dad was Chris Daniels, who was a one of the original staff announcers at Channel 4 from 1951 to 1971, when they started going live, basically, and there were no need for the live booth announcements. Bill and Dad worked together probably from I'm going to say the early to mid 70s to Dad's retirement in '83. Bill is such a great guy, and I've known he and Billy basically through Dad for probably 30 plus years. And one thing Bill was a program director at the station. Dad being public service director probably in the last 15 years of his career there at the station. And so they collaborated together, worked together on a lot of community service projects and public affairs and public service projects. And I remember Bill just being, Bill had always been just so accommodating when Dad and he worked together. And I knew Bill from my media career myself and never again worked directly with him, but always had a very good working relationship and always thought the world of him. Bill is just a consummate professional, knows so much history about not only, of course, Channel 4, but all the media in general, and then, of course, working at OETA until his recent retirement there. Bill has been, like I said, just so easy to get along with, such a great guy and such a professional. I remember one time when my oldest son was in the Boy Scouts, and this would have been late 80s, early 90s. And one day we just kind of happened to knock on Bill's house. I didn't even know that we were there. They opened the door, and there's my son and myself. Bill and I think Billy were there, probably like, who the heck is this? But anyway, we had a nice conversation. Of course, he bought some sausage or whatever it is that the fundraiser was for my son. And again, typical Bill, just always there to help you. You could call him. And Bill is always, he's a direct guy. Pretty much, you say what you're going to say, you ask a question, he tells you. Not a lot of small talk and chit chat. But that's okay, because he was still, you could get him engaged, again, in the right setting, but again, he always knew, whatever the subject was, he always, seemed to be very much there to fill in the gaps of what your knowledge had forgotten or whatever. But again, Bill, great guy, he and Billy, just, nicest people you could ever meet. I had the pleasure, I guess, of sitting next to them at Danny Williams' memorial service there at the History Center in March of this year, and that was very enjoyable. Billy and I were cutting up like a couple of school kids, and of course Bill, a little more proper, a little more serious, but still always very engaging, and you could always tell that he was right there on top of it, if not leading the way, as far as all the old stories of Danny and Channel 4.
Hi, I'm George Wesley. Just wanted to talk a little bit about Bill Thrash, whom I consider to be a good friend. As a matter of fact, though, I knew Billy before I knew Bill. We were both involved in theater, and of course, she was one of the primary people in production, getting things done in theater. But then I met Bill when I went to work at Channel 4, and he turned out to be a pretty nice guy. I was impressed because he seemed to have been such a young guy doing a darn good job. He was easy to talk to. He was interested in progress, and we got along real fine. And we're neighbors. We participated in our neighborhood organization together, and just a darn good guy. Very cooperative, and you'll see that in this little piece that I want to share with you. He cooperated with me in putting together a piece about impromptu jazz. They did a tremendous job. I was doing a show called Unity, and this is a Unity special with Bill Thrash and others.
that's jazz, and we have a group of people here who are going to spend some time today just talking about what jazz is all about. As many of you probably know, Oklahoma City was one time known as the capital of jazz, and of course now we talk about Kansas City as being the jazz capital, but there's a lot that still remains about the kind of talent we have in Oklahoma City that we want to talk about. And I think this group is the group to talk about that because they're representative of many people in our area who are involved in this kind of music. People who don't do this every day as a major living. And I'd like to introduce them to you now, beginning with our pianist, who is a television executive here at Channel 4, program director, Bill Thrash.
Hi, George. Are you
Thanks
sure Count Basie started this way?
Oh, yes. Just hang in there. On bass, we have a young man who's teaching in the private school at Corpus Christi. Marvin Williams, known throughout our area as an excellent bassist, and I'm sure you'll see that today. That'll be evident. And above me here is our drummer who claims to be the elder statesman of this group, Roland Allen. Welcome, Roland.
Thank you.
As I said in my opening remarks, the jazz still flourishes, but in very small quarters in our area. And you guys have never played together before today, right?
That's correct.
That's one of the things that fascinates me about jazz. Here you come from different disciplines, and you walk in here today, but for a few minutes of tuning up and making sure you got the right bridges or whatever, you jump right in and play great tunes like that. Incidentally, what was the name of that?
That was Blues for Unity.
Blues for Unity. All right. Maybe we got a new thing going here. But how do you do that?
Well, each song has a certain chord progression, and you just learn the chord progressions, and anybody, you learn the same ones, basically. And then, like, different musicians play the same songs slightly differently, but they still will fit into the same pattern.
That really means a lot to me. I'm sure that means that you already know a lot of the answers about what finger goes where and that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, that's mechanical. After a while, your fingers just go where they're supposed to go. Don't even worry about it.
What are you looking for in there that makes you know where to put those fingers or strike the sticks or whatever?
If you count 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4 would be the 1 that you come down on. That begins the song. And pretty much universal to the point that we'll all play that way, more or less. Sometimes I cheat a little bit.
Well, obviously, I'm not the musician you guys are, and you make a great sound, I think, for people who are getting
George,
that
one
for the
thing
first
to
time.
remember, see, is that music, there are rules to follow, and we're trying to follow rules, but we're also trying to bend them a little bit, and we're also trying to feel the music, which is a big important part of jazz, and we're also interpreting and improvising, but we're all familiar with those rules, and maybe that's what keeps us in the same key, and hopefully we will begin and end about the same time.
Hopefully.
Okay. All right. Why don't we just take an example of that? Maybe if you just start off. Okay.
Okay, well, this tune has a little intro. Not all jazz tunes or pop tunes have an intro quite this way, so it's not typical, but it's a familiar intro that the Ellington band developed, and it's a very popular song called Satin Doll. And in this case, we have a little intro to lead us in, and then we go into the tune.
And everybody will know where to jump in and do their own
Well, let's
thing.
find out.
Hopefully.
Okay. You're going to kick it off, right?
Yeah.
Go. I see you know how to stop at the same time too. I guess that's a plus.
Yeah.
We were talking about Oklahoma City as a former jazz town. People get together after a set and play all night. I've heard a lot of the old timers talk about that. I know you don't remember anything about that, do you?
Just might. Yes,
But
as a matter of
George,
fact,
back,
I do, George.
yeah. This wasn't that far back, because I know what you're talking about, those early years, the 20s and 30s and 40s, where Oklahoma City was an important place, and a lot of musicians came out of here, Charlie Christian and Basie and, you know, many others that we all know about. But even more recently, when I first met Roland was in the mid-60s, was when he was playing with Dick Shreve over at Dick's Keyboard Club over on May Avenue, which was really a great place at that time. And Dick, of course, I think is the best pianist to ever come out of this part of the country. He's now in L.A. playing. And Roland was his drummer, and I think he had Bill Michaels on bass, as I recall. I don't know where Bill is, but that was a great group, and Roland was a part of that. That's where we met.
It was a very exciting period. Very exciting.
Yeah, that was fun.
Well, where does it go compared to some of your more modern groups? And I'm not talking about the current disco, rock and roll, or whatever, your hard rock thing, but in terms of music lovers, you just don't have the numbers coming out or participating in jazz as such. What do you think the reason is for that?
Remember, George, there's some excellent players in Oklahoma City right now, working regularly and playing great jazz, and it's going on in several clubs in Oklahoma City. And then also, I think what's exciting is what's happening with the college lab band programs. What Kidwell is doing at Central State and at OCU. They have excellent big band jazz programs that are going on right now, and a lot of good players are in those bands, and needless to say, an awful lot of good players are coming out of those bands and going on to more exciting musical things after they graduate. So that's going on right now, and that makes it a pretty healthy climate. It's not bad. It could always be better. But
so you think it'll come back to the point where people will have a real appreciation for jazz artists?
Music kind of goes in cycles, you know. It takes about 20 years to make a complete cycle. In other words, to get back where it started. And initially, you know, it was mainly just jazz and the old type rock and roll. Then they started getting closer together, you know, because then a lot of jazz players started inflecting into the rock scene. So that kind of changed that around a little bit. Now it's just about to the point where it's getting ready to go back to the old sound. In fact, I was out to Los Angeles not too long ago, and I've noticed they've some of the recordings they've made just recently in the last 2 or 3 years sound like something that was cut back in the late 50s.
That brings to mind one thing right quick before we go to a break, that some people confuse jazz and blues and other kinds of music. The distinction there between jazz, say, and blues, is blues a form of jazz?
I would more or less say that blues is really the start of it all. You know, that's really where it all started.
And jazz is simply an improvisation of...
Well, yeah, you know, it's like any other art form. It has to go ahead or it'll die, you know. So you start off with the old type like Bessie Smith and what have you. And then eventually moved up into a more organized type, you know, where they started using a lot of instruments together. Then they started having arrangers, and, you know, eventually it got up to different forms, you know. So now it's gotten to the point to whereas, you know, like with the advent of disco, which is, you know, like a fad, you know, which this happens in music. They went and after a while, now the disco is even beginning to, it's not as, well, violent almost, I'd say, as it used to be. You know, it's calming down, and I think it's all getting ready to come back. And I think that the interest in the younger people, you know, as was stated earlier about Ken out there at the school, also it's there's quite a few high schools around now that are getting good jazz bands.
Right.
Good jazz bands.
Yeah.
In fact, Andre Francisco over at John Marshall had a very good stage band that I saw down at the Arts Festival, and I was quite impressed with them.
Maybe we'll have to get some of them to come in, and maybe encouraging these young people. We might do another jazz special one to get them to come in. But right now we're going to have to take a break. I want to come back and talk about a member who does something completely different as an art form. We'll talk about that right after this.
I'm old-fashioned. I love the old ways. I love the old-fashioned things. The sound of rain upon my window pane. A song of robins sing. This year's fancies are passing fancies, sighing sighs, holding hands. This my heart understands. I'm old-fashioned, I don't mind it. That's how I want to be. If you will just agree to stay old-fashioned with me. I'm old-fashioned, love the old ways. I love the old-fashioned things. The sound of rain upon my window pane. A song the robin sings. This year's fancies are passing fancies, sighing sighs, holding hands. This my heart understands. I'm old-fashioned, but I don't mind it. That's how I want to be. If only you'll agree to stay old-fashioned with me.
What a talented group. As they say, right on, brother. The time goes too quickly. We just don't have enough time. I guess that's what it boils down to, because I could listen to this all day. And I'm tempted to say, as they often say, hey, can you come back or whatever. But I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Each of you, Bill Thrash, Marvin Williams, and Roland Allen have really made this an exciting show, and I think that we'd like to do some more one day on what jazz is all about, and help with this revival of jazz, as it were, in our community, and show off the great talent that we have. So you know, maybe if people like it, they might write and tell us. And we might try to do it again sometime. Any of you guys have any parting shots?
Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you.
And I really appreciate that someone is out here trying to get everything back together again.
Very good. Well, why don't we just kind of close out with a little sample of what it's all about? And I'll just say thank you again, and thank you out there.
So my official start date was in back again at Channel 4, was in 1973, because of Bill Thrash. And the minute I get there in 1973 in my sales position, go up to my office, and Mr. Bill Thrash is there, says, oh, by the way, you're going to be on Saturday nights as Count Gregor. I found this old slide. When I remember when I was growing up watching television, Channel 4, they had this movie and late at night, and even then in the late 50s or early 60s, late, 10:30, 11 o'clock was late. But it was called Sleepwalkers Matinees. So I fell in love with that title. I found this slide. So we're going to go on Saturday nights, and you're going to be Count Gregor, and it's going to be Sleepwalkers Matinee. And the other thing is, now, I don't have a lot of just pure horror films. I have some, but I've got a lot of comedies with W.C. Fields, old classics, the Marx Brothers, with and a couple of the couple of comedians at that time. I'm trying to get their names here in just a minute. And they had Wolfman and the Frankenstein. But anyhow, he said, I think we can make it work. So we're going to start Saturday nights. And I think that time, I can't remember exactly what preceded. Oh, at that time it was the movies or whatever. But anyhow, Sleepwalkers Matinee premiered about midnight on Saturday nights in 1973 because of Bill Thrash. But Bill Thrash was more than just the programmer of those movies in our friendship. He was a great musician, a very, very exceptionally talented pianist, jazz pianist. And he knew I grew up in the big band era. So when I was at Channel 5 in those days in the 60s, there was a group of the National Broadcasters Association was the National Broadcasting Association, almost all the television stations. And every year they would have a preview of the upcoming fall shows with all the network shows. And usually it was held in Chicago. And in Chicago, home of Chicago jazz and the jazz of Chicago. And Bill Thrash knew who was up there. So when we get up there, he said, we're going to the Blue Note, which is one of the big jazz, big jazz nationally nightclub there. Oscar Peterson was going to play, a great pianist. And then one other year we saw George Shearing. And we would go, and we would to all of these jazz outlets up there in Chicago while we were there. And Bill would always take me and remind me, and we would go together. And even in Oklahoma City, he said one night, he said, guess what? At Fuzzy's on Classen, the old club there, Count Basie's coming in. Well, it happened to be my birthday, and he knew it. So let's go have your birthday with Count Basie, which we did. And then people would come out to the station. And then at the Lincoln Plaza, opened up in 1974. Well, a couple of years, and it was very successful. Matter of fact, it was in Stage Play, Oklahoma, which opened up Lincoln Plaza in 1974. And they had a big, beautiful dinner theater there. And they brought in one time Mel Torme. And so Bill Thrash said, let's go. So another couple, myself, my wife, we all went to see Mel Torme at the Lincoln Plaza Dinner Theater. Well, walked in one morning at the station, turned around, and about gosh, there was Mel Torme walking around the hallway. And he's dungarees and all kind. He loved Western movies. So Bill Thrash made sure we had a little viewing room, a 16mm camera there. Bill would go out and pick out 2 or 3 movies on the reel, 16mm, and have somebody to help Mel Torme get the film loaded, whatever. And Mr. Mel Torme would sit there, get some popcorn, Coke, whatever, and sit there in the little viewing room and watch those old movies. Wonderful person. But he got there and was there because of Bill Thrash. Bill just has so many characteristics of just a very low key. I hardly ever saw him get mad or ever. His general personality is just even a keel, just as pleasant and nice as he can be. And never would you ever know that he was such a genius at programming and movies, and has produced and directed the Lawrence Welk national shows and the Stars and Stripes shows that went on in the late 60s, right on through 76, which I got to be a part of. And even when NBC took it over, Bill Thrash was deeply involved in the entire production, directing, producing. Bill Thrash is an institution in broadcasting in Oklahoma City. One of the finest gentlemen I have ever been around in my life in this business. And I owe much of my career, probably a lot of my career, to Bill Thrash. Because no matter what, if he was at that station, Count Gregor was on the air someplace. And I did hear him say one time to somebody about programming, and he said, hey, late night when there's nothing going on, I know if I put that character on, we're going to have the success and have ratings. It happens every time I've done it. So he's always had that firm belief in that character, and I guess John Ferguson, about doing Count Gregor late night television. So Bill Thrash is very, very deeply etched indelibly in my mind and my heart that Bill Thrash has succeeded and been successful and has made stations successful wherever he has been. So I will just say to thanks Bill Thrash, thank you very much for being what you've been to me, but more importantly, being my friend. I owe you, and you're a great guy, Bill, and I love you.
I'm Lee Allen Smith. I'm an alumnus of WKY Radio and Television, KTVY Television, of years gone by. And I'd like to share a few thoughts that I have about one of the nicest gentlemen that I've ever known, and Bill Thrash. Bill is a true gentleman, a great broadcaster. He strives for perfection and always has, and usually reached it. He's a very loyal, talented, kind, and thoughtful, caring human being, and that's the main thing that I know about him, and the way my family, Deanne and my daughters, Lee, Jennifer, and Wendy feel about him. We've made a lot of trips together in broadcasting, and we've made some good trips of recent days during the Centennial, going to Macy's for our Oklahoma float during the Centennial. About 2 or 3 years we went straight for that, and then the Rose Bowl, we had a float there, and all these things that we did like that, Bill had a hand in it. He's played a major role in my life, beginning at Channel 4. He came from KOCO, originally was in Enid. Bill and I first started in our major work together, where he was a very crucial element and a positive element for the Stars and Stripes show. Anything I ever did of any major importance that we thought was important, at least, Bill had a hand in it and a major role in it, like the Stars and Stripes show for all those years, 8 years. when we had Bob Hope here and Tennessee Ernie Ford, and it goes on and on and on. But Bill was the talented guy behind the scenes that was the director, and he was so easy to work with. He was fun to work with, I might say, but he was very particular and very talented and was very quiet in the way his demeanor was, and doing all those things such as that. And then later, when we were KTVY, we had our, I think, the 30th anniversary when we had Jane Pauley here, and again Bob Hope, and several other ones that made a very successful event at the Civic Center Music Hall for Channel 4. And of course, later we did the Diamond Jubilee, and there again he was right there on it. I would get the talent, and he would put it to good use and produce it and direct it, and was just excellent at it. And some of these things we did, like the dome dedication, of course, he had several Emmys, but we fortunate for Bill and all of us to win an Emmy for that. And of course, the most recent was the Sooner. We had a Sooner Spectacular too, and he was advised us and helped us on that also. But I meant to say the Centennial Spectacular, which drew so many great stars at then the Ford Center, now the Chesapeake Arena. But when I think of the spectacular and the talent that Oklahomans had that we had here, and compare that to the 75th anniversary of the Diamond Jubilee, we had some good talent here for that, but didn't reach the numbers. We had good quality, of course, during that one when James Garner came, and many other stars during that time. But on this spectacular, where Bill had it and aired it and carried it on OETA, won another Emmy for many of us, including Bill, who's so deserving of it. It's amazing how many Oklahomans were famously involved in it, like Garth Brooks and Toby Keith, Carrie Underwood, and we had many other stars that worked from Oklahoma. But at any rate, it was a great show, and one that Bill and I were extremely proud to be a part of. And talked about show. I left Vince Gill out, perhaps, and others, but Argus Hamilton. Anyway, it was a star-studded lineup of great Oklahomans, and they came back and filled the arena down there, and it was on television. And he just was he was there every step of the way that we had things going on. But I will say, more importantly, as a friend, and one of the best friends that I've ever had, when I'm at parties or something, we forget, all of us around there, maybe 20 or 30 of us, and we don't remember what actor or actress was playing in the movie, or what movie it was that had this actor in it. And they all knew that I was going to call old Bill, and here I go. I called Bill, and he always do the answer. If he didn't, Billy did. And Bill's greatest asset is Billy Thrash, who is equally as talented and as fun go-getter in theater, and made a great partner for Bill. They both are great partners and just great together through these years. He's just, both of them are wonderful people, and she, of course, was involved with a lot of things we did, like the reopening of the Civic Center Music Hall. There they both were, helping, advising, and making it as good as it could be, because that's the way Bill was. He was a perfectionist, as I said earlier, and he reached perfection as far as I was concerned on all these things, because we were very proud of all those things we just talked about, but more importantly, those people that sponsored it were pleased and proud to be a part of it, and that's the way it happens, is people give money to make these things happen. Those are the few things that I remember and love about, and always love and cherish my friendship with Bill and Billy. And I'm pleased to be here today to talk about that. He was a great broadcaster, as I said earlier. As good as they get. So I love you both, Bill Thrash and Billy Thrash.
angel. Bye bye, baby. Time to hit the road to dreamland. Don't cry, baby. It was divine, but the rooster has finally grown. Time to hit the road.
How'd all these people get in our room?
Now you know why I don't let him out very often.
You told me probably no one would show up.
I lied.
Well, I guess we're the novelty number in this act, in this show.
Where's Ed Sullivan when you need him?
Saturday nights at 8 on OETA. Voodoo.
Team.
one great scorer comes to mark against your name, he'll write not that you won or that you lost, but how you played the game. This is Don Wallace.